T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, friends. What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, your favorite little space game podcast where, you know the whole thing. Today, we're talking about Star Citizen. You know how it is. A lot of things are going on. We've got like a surprising week. I was out of town personally, so I didn't see all this happen until maybe 24 hours ago, and a lot's going on just suddenly in Star Citizen. From the drought to the deluge, we've got like 321 in PTU, we've got huge leaks coming out, we've got 3.20 maybe getting stable, I don't know. But I've got the TheSpaceCoder with me to talk about this, plus a big change with 3.20, the change of how data is being stored in the game, which is kind of risking services like Erkul and your own armory. Thank you for joining me today, my friend Coder, longtime friend and multiple times guest of the podcast. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me again. I'm doing great. Yeah, we have a lot of very exciting stuff happening this week with 320, with 319, and possibly in the next couple of weeks, judging from what CAG have told us so far. Anyway, I should probably introduce myself, right? So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the TheSpaceCoder. I am a fellow Star Citizen YouTuber, and I am also the developer of a Star Citizen tool, the Armory, which you can find at armory.thespacecoder.space, which is a tool that lets you find these stats and sale locations for FPS weapons and armor. But there is a small catch with that now, starting in 320, which we're going to get to.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the focus of today. Like I said, we have a lot of stuff going on. 3.21 is going to be fun to talk about. Jump points coming to the game. What the heck? But yeah, TheSpaceCoder creates a service that is used by many, like other services that many of you may know from the item finder from Deep Space Crew or Cornerstone to Verse Guide doing navigation stuff, to your armory, to Erkul, which is what a lot of people use for loadouts. These services use methods that are becoming harder and harder to do, which could point towards some interesting developments in Star Citizen, but ultimately it's going to possibly start pointing towards players having a different kind of experience in the game. So before we get to all that, let's talk about what's happened since the last time we talked, because like we spoke towards the beginning of this year. I don't know if 319 was out or not, but
I think we talked like right before 319. I think 319 was in the PTU.
Okay.
There was a lot of stuff coming in.
Yeah, it was a kind of busy time and a very hectic time with 318 kind of crashing everything and everyone's families. But you, I think, had a...
That's usually what happens with a major patch around here. I don't know what everyone's surprised with.
I mean, 318 was a different kind of beast. You couldn't even log into the game.
315 with the new flight model and whatever, that nothing worked for like 3 months.
Yeah, but that was that patch. That's not that many patches that do that. I would say 318 was the worst patch release I've ever seen. I think 3.0 was not as bad, but it was more drawn out. But I've never seen anything restrict me from getting past the launcher before, and I've never been able to not log into the game for multiple days.
Yeah, they had a very rough launch with 318, and they also had a pretty rough launch with 319, but it wasn't nearly as bad. I know that, if I recall correctly, they had some persistence issues, but we kind of have that with every patch pretty much ever since persistent entity streaming came in, and long-term persistence has been with entity graph. So overall, 319, better launch than we usually have. Same for 320, actually, in my opinion, because I'm not able to get in the game for the first 24, 48 hours, and with 320, I was in 3 hours after. No problems. I
disagree. I think our launches this year have been worse than before. I don't recall recognizing a patch launch. I know that patches launch more unstable than generally their .x patches that follow up, but I just don't really remember having issues of logging in with 316 or 315 or 314 or 310 or 3.8 or 7 or any of those. Like,
You can kind
30Ks,
of tell that,
yeah.
you know, at some point in, I think it was 317 or 316, they moved to a different account provisioning, as far as I know. And that was causing a lot of the lobby issues we were seeing with 318, actually, because they moved to a different service. And that was kind of screwing things for everyone.
Yeah, and
And ever since they patched it up a little bit, but if you have noticed, for the past year, I think we've had very consistently have a major patch launch followed immediately by a free fly, which I think is usually a mistake because they get a ton of people coming in at the same time, and that generally tends to break things. I think staggering it a little bit would help things along quite a lot.
I do feel like the actual patch health is better. So I agree with you there this year. Like those big pieces of tech, like if PES wasn't in the game, then I feel like these patches would be better than any we've experienced, and more stable for sure.
Yeah,
But
stability has been a big issue, but it's for a good reason. Like you said, there's a lot of stuff coming in right now on the back end, technology-wise, new things, and that's generally detrimental for stability. But the CIG is very on top of fixing all of this. Especially in 320 PTU, we saw CIG very much being on top of stability and performance, which was a noticeable difference for me. I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but for me, I definitely noticed CAG doing a lot more performance and stability related stuff.
well, they've been saying it long enough that they're going to focus on our quality of life and stuff. I mean, like a year and a half at least, they've been saying they're going to really buckle down on that. And they have to some extent with 317. They did a lot of that stuff. They raised the counts for servers and stuff, but it is expected, and I think maybe a little overdue at this point.
Well, you know, there's a delay between what the community managers say and what the developers actually do. It's a common thing in IT. Okay, it happens to all of us.
Well, in the beginning of the year, the last time we talked, you had different expectations. I think you were expecting patches to slip a little bit further, first 319, and I think 320 you had said you were expecting to not come on time, but they've, I think, done a pretty good job and even kind of surprised some rollouts this year.
Yeah.
Despite them not being necessarily the best rollouts. Have they surpassed your expectations then?
Definitely, yes. I did expect things to slip, mostly because we had a lot of delays with 318 due to PES, and I thought they would take a little more time fixing things up. But that was just kind of a pessimistic estimate because, you know, new technology, lots of issues. That was a very rocky launch. I think we can all agree on that. But they actually were very on top of it. So I'm thinking they probably put a lot of resources on it. I don't think they cut a lot of content to make the deadlines because I don't think content is the problem right now. It's the core tech that's being delayed that we're waiting on. Definitely 320 launched a lot earlier than I expected. I think they were possibly a week or two ahead of my expectation on that launch.
Oh, that's not
And
that
now we
much
have
earlier.
that's 2 weeks is a lot. In my mind, that's a lot. That's, when you think about it, that's going to be 5 to 10 PTU cycles, depending on how many builds you're doing.
Well, yeah, but
That's a lot.
I'm thinking it on the scale of, you know, we're guessing these dates out for months, right? So we're like, okay, I'm guessing 3.20 is going to be out in late September, back in July.
Yeah, I have sort of went back in a bit of a retrospective over the 319, 320 on how I do my expectations, and I think I started to tune in more into sort of the PTU cycles and the builds rather than the time scale of it, and that has sort of helped me dial my expectations a little bit more, which is good.
It's hard to do when it hasn't entered PTU though.
Well, you keep forgetting I'm Iwakari, so I see the things that you don't see.
Yeah, okay. But like, for instance, if we were to say there's going to be a patch coming out in December, or let's say this was a normal year and we were expecting a patch in December, there's a lot of leeway on when that might land. and that's the last. That's I think the most sure patch of the year. We know that's going to come before they go out to break in late December. But like a patch like say their Q2 patch, which comes I think generally in July, I think late July, early August, the end of
like
Q2,
something like that,
and or end of June maybe. I don't know. Like trying to call that like in January, be like, oh yeah, that patch is going to come out like second week of August. It's like impossible.
It's like the summer patch, you know, the Q2 patch. It always is like, yeah, it's going to be in summer.
Yeah,
at some point.
Yeah, like I put a tweet out I think at the beginning of this year trying to call when the patches would happen this year. And I think I actually got some of it right, but like this is such a strange year. Nothing that has happened this year has been traditional. Folks who joined Star Citizen anytime since the end of 2021, I would say. Any time since before 317. So like the inventory came in, the medical system came in, and then they brought in 317. Nothing's been normal since then.
No.
And I don't even know if there's going to be a new normal. Or if there's going to be going back to normal.
The thing that really surprised me is the 321. I think I see why they did it, but it really sort of blindsided me a little bit. Like, oh, because I log in the morning, I look at Spectre and it's like, oh, 321 PTU? What?
Well, hold on. Don't jump the horse. We'll get to that. We'll get to 321. Hold on. Let's talk about 3.20 first. All right.
Oh boy.
See, this is the problem. It's too much new stuff. We got this guy. He's talking about a patch that just came out. We can't even talk about the patch that also just came out. Tell me about 3.20. What do you think of this patch so far? It exceeded expectations in terms of times of delivery. It has released, you said, pretty stable in your opinion. Overall, what are you getting from it?
I mean, you can split it kind of content and technology. Technology really surpassed expectations. They fixed a lot of stuff. This was a stability patch, 100%. They fixed a lot of things, performance stuff. I think a lot of the crash recovery things now work. I think I've had some successful 30K recoveries this patch, which is very, very nice. Generally, things seem to be a little bit smoother. But on the content side, it has been a little bit weird for me. Those listeners and viewers who watch my videos, they're going to know that I had some strong opinions about things that came out with 320.
Was it the cargo stuff?
Oh, it was the cargo stuff. The cargo stuff really...
I knew it.
You know, expectations were low. And yet, I'm sorry.
It's annoying.
The Hull C...
After all this time,
yes, it's cool. It's a very beautiful ship. I have some design reservations, like why is there a ladder going to the crew quarters? But whatever. So yeah, there are some design reservations, but overall, good ship. But the mechanics, oh my god! I have tried. I have a spreadsheet, and I have like 50 or 60 attempts to use the Hull C. None are successful. Did not even get past the first cargo. And I still hear about people getting these issues with it. So I feel like maybe that needed a little bit more work. Also,
are they ever actually going to get it in working? I mean,
yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm not going to excuse the ship not working because that has been very annoying. But they're never going to launch a ship that doesn't break sometimes.
That's true. So you know they get, you know, some they get a little bit of benefit of the doubt on that one. Not gonna lie, but yeah, it was a very interesting release of the cargo mechanics. They did put in a whole new proprietary cargo system that's way too convoluted and way too annoying to use for anyone to actually use.
As a placeholder, that thing is crazy.
Yeah, like the demo in ISC was very cool, but why does it have to be so annoying? So it's like, twice the complexity of normal cargo.
Yeah. So for anybody who's listening to this and isn't really following what we're talking about, the Hull C is a new ship, cargo ship, big ship. It's the first of its kind, uses exterior gravity-driven plates to hold cargo. So this thing has a different way of loading itself than other ships. In fact, it can't even land on planets with itself fully loaded. It has to go to a space station. And here's the method of loading this ship with cargo. go to the ship ASOP terminal. Wait, did I start that right?
No.
No.
When you're
no.
loading cargo, you have to go
No,
to
I'm
the
sorry.
admin
Yes.
office,
Go to the
buy the
admin
cargo,
office. Yes. Buy the
call
cargo.
the ship, get in your ship, call for cargo loading, which is a separate thing from ATC.
Well, you leave your hangar and then you call.
Yeah. Then you
cargo
call.
loading. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it gives you an area. It gives you a big glowing box near the cargo deck. You fly there, pray to your god that it works and it detects your ship. When it does, it starts loading it. It runs a timer. When anything happens, a leaf blows into the cargo loading zone, it interrupts the timer.
Just random leaves blowing through the vacuum of space.
Yeah, when you leave the station, before your cargo is loaded, you forfeit all the unloaded cargo, which is really stupid. Like, you lose the money, I think. I'm not sure if they reverted that, but I think you lose the money. And then you are loaded. Now, to unload is the fun part. You have to dock with the station, get out of your ship, go to the admin office, sell your cargo, buy other cargo, go back to your ship, undock, call for cargo. Actually, you can't even load right away because you have to empty out. So you have to undock, call cargo, go do the timer again while it unloads. Dock back to the station, go to the admin office again, buy cargo, go back to your ship, call cargo, go load. You see how annoying this gets.
Yeah, the point comes across, and it's disappointing. I mean, we all understand. What?
Have you ever looked at an extended Hull C while it's docked?
Yes.
It fits. So why can't we just load it like a normal ship?
Yeah.
And when you look at the, how much clearance you have, probably the two bigger hulls would fit also.
Yeah, no, that's how it's going to work. I mean, we all know that it's going to get loaded while docked. We've seen it in the trailer. We've seen it in concept art. They've laid it out. This is all placeholder.
Yeah, this is the thing that I think annoys most people about this is that, they showed that very shiny Hull C trailer, and it could not be further from the truth.
Okay, but I've had some people jumping down my throat for liking that trailer. I don't know what the deal is with people not.
Oh, it is a very good trailer. Like, it is a very good trailer.
Why not like the trailer? This is from day one. Every single ship trailer that has been in Star Citizen, that has been used for marketing Star Citizen, is being released as a fictional commercial. Yeah. So, of course, they're not going to release the trailers with like a placeholder style of gameplay. And I understand they're using that to sell the ship, but they're using it to sell a ship that's not even around yet. The Hull C's not here. You're not engineering the Hull C. You're not worrying about your signature of the Hull C. You're not loading your Hull C. You're not paying for NPCs to load it. These are just it's the next step up from the JPEG, folks.
Yeah, to me, it's a placeholder. And to me, it just feels like a bit of a waste of development time. Because they probably spent a lot of time implementing this and a lot of time fixing it. Because we had 10 separate PTU patches where they said they fixed the cargo loading issues and they haven't. And this is a couple hours of someone trying to fix it every single time. So, couldn't we put this person on something more relevant rather than a placeholder? Well, I understand that they probably wanted to test out cargo timers because this is a very good way to test out cargo timers as a separate unit. I give them this. This is a very okay way to do this, but it doesn't work.
I feel like the only problem is they should have just let us load stuff while it was docked. It really feels like the only issue. And from what I'm hearing, what people are telling me, the reason that they didn't do that is because they don't want people to clog up the docking ports, to which I say, why did we get cargo decks 2 years ago that don't have enough docking ports for cargo ships?
That was my thing too. Just add more docking ports. There's 3 ships that can use the docking ports anyway. So unless 4 Hull Cs, 4 890s, and 4 Hammerheads meet at one locations, it will be okay. It will be fine.
Yeah, these are the kinds of little things I wish we could learn about. Please give us a Star Citizen Live where we have Todd Pappy or somebody who worked on these features from the UPU team, or no, it's the USPU team, come in and just talk about like this is how the feature was rolled out, and maybe they'll do that. I really hope they do, because understanding why the whole seat cargo system rolled out the way it did, and I guess just that on its own was going to tell us a lot more about what we can expect.
I am very much looking forward to the postmortem on this one. The 319 postmortem was a very interesting read. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah.
It very much read like the 318 one.
Didn't they combine them?
I think they did, but I think it read like what was it, 317? I know that I was reading. I'm like, I've read this before. This is the same stuff over and over. But I'm looking forward to the postmortem on the cargo mechanics for Halsey. I think we will learn a lot of the decisions, because I don't necessarily think it was a terrible idea to do it the way they do it. I just think they probably just could have slapped the timer on the loading while you are docked. No need to fly to a separate location. You know, I think there's a big problem with the game, and this is purely software theory, like what I think is wrong. I think the game has issues with detecting objects that are entering a certain area. I think it's possibly a desync issue, because I know that we had shields lagging behind ships sometimes, or I think it's a problem in 320. So I think the more reliable way of doing it is physical connections, because then you can do some stuff in the code that physically connects different things. I don't know how else to explain it better to people who are not developers, but basically you can like pass the reference more reliably, in my opinion, when there's a physical attachment going on. But yeah, I think that's the problem, and I don't know if it's worth fixing, especially if it's a placeholder feature. I think they should just do a fix where it goes back to like, yeah, you're docked. There's a timer on cargo loading while you're docked.
So the cargo system is probably the biggest part of 3.20, and also, well, I guess Arena Commander probably is the biggest part, but the most like forward-looking thing is the cargo system, and it's clearly pretty important. I'm hoping that we see development on it every patch from now on.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, is there anything else in 3.20 that you think deserves conversation? Should we move on to the good stuff, the juicy stuff, or?
I'm just gonna say, good job with Arena Commander. The Tank Royale, really good fun. One commentary on Master Modes. I only have one thing to say about it. I did a bit of flying with Master Modes. It's good, but I have lost the vision of what problem they're trying to solve with this. And I feel like they might have also, and that's not good. But I'm hoping, future iteration, because we see a very limited version of Master Modes right now. I'm hoping that future iterations will explain this a little bit better and show intent more than what we're seeing now, hopefully. And a big favorite for me, a very small change, like barely a footnote in the patch notes, wheeled vehicles handling improvement. Finally, driving feels better.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like ice everywhere. It's still not great. There's still a couple of questionable things going on, but you can actually flip most vehicles now when you do things that would flip a vehicle, which is very good. I hope they iterate on this a little bit more, because I feel like ground vehicles have been a little bit forgotten in the last year or so, even though we had a lot of vehicles release. But yeah, I think with that, we can move on to the next one.
Well, I want to go back to what you said about the ground vehicles, because I agree that they're good, but not great. How do you feel about that? That we are now getting this roadmap-worthy update to ground vehicles after all this time, that are aiming to make them more gameplay ready, but they still aren't great. When you see that happen with different features, do you feel like they should be hitting a higher bar at this point?
Not really. When you think about it, Star Citizen is very iterative in the approach. They do a thing, and they see how it works out. And I kind of see the point of why they do it. It is very difficult to kind of get things right the first time, especially when you're working with very loose specifications, which is pretty much the definition of Star Citizen. But I am very happy for the update to vehicles because CAG, they put a lot of emphasis on using vehicles on things. They're like, oh yeah, we want you to be using ground vehicles. We want you to be driving places. We want to do ground racing. And Daymar Rally is now canon. So ground racing is really a thing in Star Citizen now. So I feel like they really need to make the driving experience pretty good for people to actually use it, because if driving is annoying, people are just not going to do it. And that's what I've seen in the last year or so, where vehicle handling just kind of went downhill. And even if you look at it from a purely financial standpoint, having a good vehicle handling physics or vehicle handling model, it helps you sell more ground vehicles, plain and simple.
Yeah,
like if they handle well, if they feel well, people are going to buy them. Even though they're cheap in game, people are just going to like pick one up because they're generally pretty cheap for real money also. So someone's going to pick up a ground vehicle. Cyclone is like what, $40. Like, why not pick up a Cyclone? It's a fun vehicle.
These little changes add up over time, and in a couple of years, in a few years, the sort of cascade of these small updates, while they aren't going to build a whole finished game, we all know that, not in a couple of years, they're going to make the environment a lot better.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about the big elephant in the room. This comes with a few different topics tied to it, but the big topic of the day, I guess, 3.21 is in PTU. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Where the heck does that come from? I
don't see that one coming.
Yeah, I don't know. Why is this happening? Tell me.
My theory is that, so we know that what was supposed to be 320X is 321 now. That they have said this in the little companion post that went with 321 PTU.
Okay.
The reason why I think they're doing this is because, like they said, they're going to be implementing replication layer. And
real quick, the post where they say that 3.20.x is going to be 21, what is that on?
It was on Spectrum under announcements, I think.
Okay, Spectrum, cool. I just wanted to know if it was Spectrum or if it was like a comment or a leak or what.
It was an actual comment it was an actual post on Spectrum. They did say like some basics, and they just said more info coming next week.
Okay. So all the stuff that I put in my video a week ago is now wrong. I love covering Star Citizen on YouTube, man.
Hey, see, that's why I wait like a month to do shit.
I can't.
I know. This is the luxury that I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think the main reason they did this is, like they said, they want to do replication layer. They want to put that in for testing. And I think this is purely a versioning thing, because replication layer is a pretty major change going on with the game. And you can't just slap that into a minor patch. That makes no sense from a versioning standpoint. So I think that's why we're seeing so much content coming in. Am I allowed to say the word, the J word yet? Or are you going to shut me up?
The J word. Oh, yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, so now that's why we're seeing like the jump points come in. There's the border stations near the jump points. So I think what they're doing is they're merging in all the content for 321 that was supposed to be actual 321, and they're trying to clean up the code base in preparation for these big code changes for server meshing. That's at least what I think, because that would be the reasonable thing to do. That's why we're... Did you hear that? I hope not.
Kind of.
Yeah. I will not go investigate. Anyway, so that's why I think they're cleaning up the code base, and they're getting ready to do big things. That's why we're seeing replication layer coming, and we're seeing jump points coming. Even though they don't have their functionality, the content is ready. There's no reason to hold it somewhere in a branch. They merged it in, they pushed it out.
Okay.
Good times.
So we're going to break this down for listeners, how this process works and why, in a minute. But first, why is it important that the replication layer be separated? And is there any implication of what that's going to be, what effect that's going to have on players? Or is this just kind of a back end preparation for server meshing?
So why is replication layer being a separate service important? Uh, in recent years, sort of a global, in recent years, last 5 to 10 years in IT and general web service development, microservice architecture has been very popular, which is where you sort of separate things that are related into separate services that can run on separate machines. This is very good for performance. Also, it is good for development because you can have separate teams working on things in parallel. But for Star Citizen, this is purely a performance thing because now they can split pretty much all the networking related stuff, which is what the replication layer does, into a whole separate server. So it's no longer on the game server, it's no longer on the shard, which gives you more resources to do the simulation. So the AI is going to be a little bit smoother. We can have more players. The tick rate is going to be a little bit better, which is going to help the economy and the outposts. And I think we might see a little uptick in performance, but take that with a grain of salt because performance is kind of finicky with Star Citizen.
And as far as I'm aware, the whole point of server meshing is to separate the simulation from the data, right? Or from the server, something. Separating the simulation from something. I can't remember what the other thing is, but like that's the big ticket they've been driving towards for like 5 years, right?
So step one was persistent storage, which was inventories, the stuff, the entity graph, then persistent entity streaming, which basically handles streaming objects in and out of the game. So this communicates with the entity graph, and it brings objects, stores their locations, that kind of stuff. So that's, again, a separate service that went off. Now the game server no longer has to do it. All the actual game instance does, it just sends a request somewhere and waits for the response. It doesn't have to do anything else. Now, the replication layer is going to handle the networking, which is going to, player logins, sort of interactions with other services. It also means that crash recovery is going to be improving quite significantly. I know, CH, you mentioned that they want to do sort of seamless crash recovery, where if your instance crashes, it's kind of going to seamlessly bring you into a different instance. I am not sure how exactly that's going to work, but it should definitely make crash recovery more reliable, and generally crashes for network reasons a little bit less severe, which is very nice. And it generally is also going to handle different services crashing independently of the game server, which is actually kind of another thing why split things into different services. If you have it all in one big cube of things, let's say your networking stuff crashes on your game server and it's all together, that means your game server is going down. That's a 30K, everyone's getting kicked out.
Right.
But now that networking stuff is somewhere else, if it crashes somewhere else, that instance is going down, but you can just bring up another instance. That instance is going to communicate with your game server. The players are probably not going to see the difference.
Right.
And same with, the entity graph, all of this. If you have a separate service, you can spin it up as it crashes if you have to.
So this is kind of, I think, one of the big messages they had about server meshing, that if a 30K hits and the server goes down, it doesn't matter because multiple servers are sharing that load.
Yeah.
What is the difference between then this replication layer splitting and that end goal?
So replication layer is just one part of the whole server meshing solution. There's, I believe they said there is, the persistent entity graph, replication layer, and then something else, one other layer that does something. I don't remember. It was CitizenCon was a long time ago. Okay, I don't remember. But it's just another step towards server meshing. We know that they're going to do static server meshing first. That's going to be a very big step. They will finally be allowed to run multiple systems in one game instance, or possibly what I think they could do with replication layer, how it ideally would work, and how persistent entity graph is going to work in PES, is that you could actually have one server run Stanton and a different server run a different star system, and the moment you jump through a jump point, it's going to seamlessly switch you between these two servers. I think they can do that, assuming that these servers are somehow linked together. That's what I would assume they would do. They would just assign like a cluster of game servers to handle a group of star systems.
Maybe
At least with,
mesh them, if you will.
mesh them in a static way. Because dynamic server meshing is just steps this up to, if there is no one in a certain area, that area is not going to be on the server. A good example of this would be when Pyro launches. For the first couple months, you're going to have maybe 70% of the players in Pyro.
Yeah.
Everyone else is going to be in Stanton. So there is no need to have a balanced server load or server capacity on both of these. So there's no reason to have one server run Pyro and one server to run Stanton, because one server is going to be overloaded and the other one's going to be, going to be underloaded. And dynamic server meshing solves this by putting the resources from the available resource pool to where they are actually needed. But that's really the final step of this. And what I think they're going to do in the meantime is going to have like the static mesh of servers, which is going to have some fluidity to what areas which server handles, depending on what, where the performance is needed. Object containers are very granular, so they can very, very granularly split where they're putting their processing powers on servers, which is very good. Where was I going with this? Right.
Love those moments.
Yeah, I was just kind of like blanked out for a second. So that is very good. And eventually they can, I think what they're going to do first is they're going to build up server capacities. They're going to be putting more servers into this static mesh. So we're going to see, hundreds of players in one instance. And then when they're happy with kind of the size of this, I think then they're going to be able to move to dynamic server meshing, because then you're going to have actually enough players to see some movement in the dynamic server mesh from a resource standpoint. And then we can start looking at having one global instance of everything.
So this is all very, very important. And I think you laid out a lot of what players might notice over this overall process. But for this first step with 321, obviously nobody really knows what's going to go down with this. We only just learned about this information over the last few days. It might not even fully pan out in the way that it sounds like it will. But in 321, do you think players will notice any difference?
I think we are going to see some login issues.
Wait, I'm sorry. Not in 321. In this separate replication layer test that they're doing, that I'm guessing will eventually become live 321. I don't know.
I think there's going to be some login issues for the initial part, because that's a big part of what the replication layer does. There is possibly going to be some connection issues in general with the servers. Crash recovery is probably going to be a bit weird until they kind of flesh out some things. But I think once it's ready, we can expect a more performant experience, especially in kind of the lobby side of things. So logging in, connecting into the game, and generally loading. I think we're going to see a little bit of speed up there, less crashes, less disconnects. And I'm really looking forward to see how the crash recovery part of it works out. We still don't know if it's going to be just, if the replication layer crashes, it's going to recover automatically and the players are not going to see it, which would still be very nice. It's going to reduce the number of server crashes by some amount. And if they actually manage to put in kind of the seamless game server recovery, that would be very interesting to see. That's going to pretty much eliminate 30Ks.
I'd also like this.
That would be very optimistic. That's a very optimistic thing to say.
I would also like to see them allow us to pick our servers or our shard. That was something that they talked about pretty early on, with persistent entity streaming being sort of the next step after the initial launch, before replication layer was getting separated. And we haven't really heard too much about that initiative since then, but being able to know that you're getting into the same shard every day after day, week after week, through each patch and each quarter, I think like you could start building bases out there with these cargo crates. It'd be nice to be able to know you could go back to that same spot.
Yeah. I know they talked about it. I think it's kind of low priority item because it's
Boo.
not something that's like necessary for
It's life changing, man.
I mean, it is life changing, but it's not something that you need in the minimal viable product.
My heart lives on my shard. Put that on a shirt. It's fair though. It's probably not as important in the grand scheme of things with server meshing, since they're going to have a service that does that anyways.
But the positive thing on that is that once the replication layer is in and it is relatively stable and bug free, they will be able to get more of this networking stuff in, which would be very cool to see.
I hope so.
But I'm not sure if it's gonna be a part of it. I know that they also discussed some matchmaking changes, which would also be pretty interesting to see. I know that they said they're gonna try to match you with people who are on your friends list more and people who are in your org. So that could be interesting. But I don't think that's gonna be coming in with the first implementation. But I think we're gonna see it soon. Because,
yeah,
like I said, once you have this basic networking layer, it is very, very easy to build on it. That's kind of the main thing with microservice architecture, is that once you have it, it's very easy to build on it.
that is,
and you can kind of have a team of people completely independently working on this now. Because while this was a part of the overall game, you kind of have to work around the patch cycle and the changes other people are doing. But once you put it out into a separate server, that's it. Like, you're only managing that one service as a team, which is very nice because you can do whatever the heck you want independently of everything, unless you're making breaking changes, in which case it gets a little bit weird. People get a little bit angry with breaking changes sometimes.
Exciting for you network guys, huh?
Don't call me a network guy. A lot of people are going to be mad about that. I'm not a network guy. I'm a filthy software developer.
I'll call anybody a network guy. Are you going to come on my show and tell me I'm wrong?
I'm a filthy software developer. I'm the worst of the worst.
All right, fine. Whatever. You're a local network guy then. We'll just leave it at that. So this whole process, all of this is happening very quickly, almost like they're stumbling over timelines. We literally, we just got 320. Suddenly 3.21 is coming into PTU, which almost never happens. And we're also, CitizenCon is coming up, so there's a lot going on with that as well. Feels like a squashed timeline. They're trying to push this pretty quickly. It sounds a lot like what they actually said last May with their testing of server meshing. They wanted to release PES, and then alongside that, also release a test server that can then start testing server meshing. So,
yeah,
like you said, almost like they are hardening this to have multiple months of PTU testing rather than just starting the PTU in November or something, so that they can launch this in December. The thing that I think is pretty telling here is, we can't read too much into this, but we're also sitting here on a podcast, so let's take everything here with a grain of salt. But the jump point being included in this patch, the jump point being included in this patch does implicate that they are expecting it soon. It doesn't mean the next patch, though, right?
I mean, I hope they're expecting it soon. I am genuinely hoping for this because this is very cool. This is something that we've been waiting for years now. This is something that's gonna, validate the project for the next couple of years. But at the same time, I'm trying to be realistic, where I'm like, this is just content. This is just objects physically in the game, which is a completely separate pipeline from the core tech. This is just, a bunch of artists and a bunch of gameplay programmers creating this completely separately from the core tech team. And they will push it into the version control. They will have a branch with it, and it's just going to sit. And the problem with having something sit separate from the main stream that's coming in is that as you're changing the main development stream, the thing that you have sitting in a separate branch might become invalid. for the changes that you're bringing in. So it is actually better to bring it in, even if it's just content that doesn't have any gameplay, that doesn't have any tech in it, so that it stays up to date as the main stream develops. So I think that's what happened here. They just kind of pushed it in because they had it and didn't want it to sit around. And still very cool location to explore from what I've seen. I think it's still achieved its purpose. People are going to go there. People are going to see it. People are going to be excited about it. Like, hype is very important with this project. And I think CIG achieved this with having these. Hopefully they don't remove them. Hopefully this was not a mistake, because there's still the very small chance that this was a mistake and this was not supposed to be in there. But I think at this point they kind of have to go with it. It's like, if it was a mistake, they have to roll with it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the footage, it doesn't look finished. It has some rough edges here and there, but still, it looks good. Like, it's a very nice first glimpse. I like it. It looks cool. But yeah, I think it's just like a cleanup thing. In my realistic opinion, it's a cleanup thing. It's not like they're trying to hint at like, oh, Pyro at CitizenCon.
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna. I think we're gonna see Pyro at CitizenCon. I just don't think it's gonna be in our hands by CitizenCon.
Of course, it is. It is by law. It must be done.
And when you think about it, they now have a separate studio, basically just building out locations for them. So this sort of physical content, locations, buildings, this is just going to be coming in, because it's a completely separate team that doesn't really need much input on the development side. They just build things, and they can do this very quickly. We have seen CIG, their tooling on building locations. They can get this done very, very quickly. So I think we're going to see a lot of content being shown, content being streamed or put into the actual game. But the technology and the gameplay might be lagging behind, because that needs some development. And right now the focus is on Squadron.
Yeah, agreed. What else is there on 3.21? Have you seen anything else? Anything else
with the replication layer? They put in a ton of fixes from what I've seen. And as far as we know, all of the 320X content is going to go into 321.
Okay, so
that's going to get rolled in. So that's going to be the Spirit. It's going to be
SRV, tractor beam, storm tank.
Yeah, so it's a lot of stuff. I'm actually surprised that they got the storm in.
And to be honest, if this is a PTU we're assuming they're going to run this PTU for a few months and then launch the patch in December. We're going to see some pretty big features added to this throughout the PTU phase. I mean, there's chances we could see another rendition of the cargo refactor in here. We could see something else regarding bounty hunting.
That's what I'm kind of waiting for them to announce next week, or I guess this week. That's where you're going to be listening to this. Because my understanding is that they rolled in basically replication layer and 320X into 321, and 321 is going to go out as 320X. And then there's going to be a separate 322, I'm assuming, after that, which is going to be the actual major patch.
Oh, that'd be weird.
That would be very weird, but that's, reading the initial announcement, that's what I'm getting from this.
So you think they'll be running a 321 PTU branch alongside a 321 live branch, so they can test replication in the 321 PTU?
Maybe.
That's interesting.
That would be very interesting. I see the merit behind it from a development standpoint. But yeah, generally the thing that kind of hints at this for me is that, we rolled in 320X into 321, but 321 is just 320X plus replication layer. There's no mention of 322 in this.
Also, no mention of other features. So if there's no other features, it will come out sooner than later.
Yeah. And when you think about it, 321 went into PTU right away. There was no Evocati, there was no waves, just open PTU straight away, out of nowhere. Which is what they usually do with X patches, the minor patches. So,
well, We will see. If you're listening to this podcast, then you are at the forefront of this new. Okay, well, if you're listening to this as soon as it came out, you're at the forefront of this news. It's probably before they've been able to get any messaging out on this in the new week. But this is
if you're
really...
listening to it after, feel free to comment how wrong we are.
Yes,
it's good
please
for the algorithm.
do. Oh gosh, tell us.
If you're listening to this and you heard the network guy comment, go to my channel and comment the local network guy on my videos. That's going to be fun. You got to confuse the heck out of the algorithm.
The local network guy. All right, so that's 321. Let's dip back a little bit to another big topic of today, which is 320 brought in a big change that we actually talked about the last time you were on, as they were trying to bring it in with 319, but then CIG kind of fell back and said, no, we're not going to do it. Now they have shoved it straight into 320, and it is kind of affecting services like yours, the Armory, item finders, commodity trackers, and many have seen in the community over the last couple weeks, Erkul. These are all services that are kind of at risk due to these changes to data in the game, starting with 3.20 and probably not going away after this. Can you explain kind of what's going on?
So I think a lot of people caught this in 319 PTU, that CIG removed the information about shop inventories from the game download, which is where these services, Erkul, the Armory, Item Finder, they do a little bit of crowdsourcing on the side. SC Trade Tools, they also data mine this. UE Exchange, they do a mix of everything, I believe. If someone knows the guys who developed that, correct me in the comments and tell them to reach out. Their tool is very nice. So yeah, all of these tools, they use data mined information to find out what items and commodities can be bought where at and what price, and generally what is the available inventory, because that's the information that we had. In 319 PTU, CIG removed this from the download, and presumably this was moved to the server side. And then they converted it for 319 live. For reasons unknown, I'm guessing because the server side provider of this didn't work as well as expected. And then in 320, they actually put this back into the PTU, and then it actually went live with it. Now, first, let's talk about why this is a good thing. This is a very good thing, actually, for two big reasons. Number one, CIG can now edit this data in real time without having to push out a patch, which is excellent. This is amazing. This will allow them to do...
I'm immediately, like, the implications start coming to my head.
Yes, and I'm getting to the implication. Eventually, shop inventories and item prices and commodity availability is going to be controlled by the dynamic economy. By having this information server-side and being able to edit it in real time, it opens that interface to the global economy and dynamic economy, and for this to be changed as we go and as we do things in the verse, which was a very, very important prerequisite for the dynamic economy. So these are the two reasons why this is very important. On the other hand, here come the bad things. Or it's not a bad thing. It's just gonna suck for a little bit for everyone. So with this data no longer being available from the game download, all of these tools have lost their primary data source, because that was kind of the single source of truth for all of us, because it was just there. And we didn't have to rely on people telling us where things are. So I know Erkul was talking about it on Discord and on Twitter as well, on how we're going to handle this. So far, for Erkul, for myself, I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. I was trying to avoid crowdsourcing data for the Armory for the longest time, because I know that it's annoying to fill out forms manually, because that's what we're going to have to do, guys. I'm sorry. If you want to know where to buy items, you're going to have to fill out the form. I'm going to do my best to do it also, but you got to help me. So that's what I'm working on for the Armory right now. It's going to be ready hopefully in the next 2 weeks. It's a lot of work, and I don't have time. But yeah, so yeah, it's a lot of work to get that done and get it done correctly. And all of these tools are going to have to do this. Crowdsource information, so implement the means for users to give this information willingly, which is a big thing.
When that comes to things like DPS, like ratings on items, is it true for that too?
As far as I know, no. It's just
Okay.
inventories for shops right now.
Okay, gotcha.
But the implication is that eventually all of this data is going to go away, which is going to be the end for all of us, pretty much. Because the game doesn't quite explicitly give you this information as you go. You can't really look up stats on ship components. There are some limited stats on armor, but we all know that those are not necessarily true all the time because the in-game descriptions are very different from the actual values of some of the FPS gear, as far as I know. So that's going to be a big problem when that goes away. When that information goes away, that's going to be the end for all of us, pretty much.
When you say the end, do you mean that like literally we're just not going to have third-party apps or third-party services doing this kind of item tracking and stuff
It
in the
will
game?
be. It is safe to say that data is going to be pretty static. It's not going to change that much. So it will be valid from the last point where you had data from the files. But over time, as changes are going to be getting implemented, that data is going to be going bad very quickly. And that's, I have come to terms with this, that the armory will probably shut down in the next 2 years because of this change. But again, it's a good change. Having this data on the server is better for the game overall. And at that point, I don't know how Erkul is going to do it once this happens. Maybe CIG will give us a way to get this information in game, and it will be possible to data or to crowdsource. But if not, that's going to be the end of Erkul. Also, probably we kind of know what he posted on Twitter with server cost rise being increased every year, and this kind of not being very sustainable long term. And this is true. Server costs are going up for third-party tools. I am very lucky to have very generous sponsors who cover my server costs. So that's going for me. Also, the Armory is a fairly small tool. Let's be honest. Not a whole lot of people use the Armory. Which, if you're listening, go use the Armory. It's pretty cool.
It will be linked in the show notes.
Yes.
So this is a very big change. This is like a this is a ground level sort of foundational change to the
Yes.
game. Less so on the feature end and more just the almost the design of the game. Is this do you think this reflects a change in CIG's attitude towards the game, or is this just something that's always been coming and now is something might be coming up that calls for it? Like, why is this happening now?
I think this is kind of a requirement for the development to go forward. You can kind of look at this from the perspective of, there are three ways of looking at this. As a third-party app developer, I am sad about this because I know that something I worked on will end because of this, very likely. And at this point, I'm very much at CIG's mercy with this. Like the ball is in their side of the court. They have to do something. They either have to implement ways for us to get this data automatically that don't break the balance, which is where kind of the backers come in, the backer point of view, where you have kind of two distinct opinions on this, where people really love these tools because it gives you the information where you need. I need to buy X component or X armor. Like, yeah, this tool is going to tell me where to get that. But on the other hand, you have the group of backers who are like, yeah, well, you're not supposed to have this information. You're supposed to go places and try to find out. But most people don't like trial and error when they're trying to get a certain piece of equipment.
Yeah.
But it's a reasonable concern. It does, in theory, break balance where you have all the information, which is where CIG have to again come in and find the balance of how much information are we giving players. Is the game going to be completely opaque, where you're not going to know anything until you get your boots on the ground and you open the kiosk, which is very bad design, in my opinion, because withholding information from the user is generally bad, unless you have to. Or you're going to go, the other way, we're going to be completely transparent and give all of this information, which I think it's also bad because it does break the balance. Well, so you have to find some middle ground.
I think this opportunity is a lot like others they've created for themselves, where they create holes in the game that they could fill with something great. Let's look at item persistence. They have created a system in which players can now help the server performance by both tugging ships with their own ship, right, for an in-game job, or picking up trash and throwing it into a trash can that despawns it. This is a tangible benefit to the server in game, and also gameplay opportunity for people. I feel like this is the same kind of thing. They're cutting off the data source, and it's kind of starting to open up avenues for data running to form, right? To start to fill out our understanding of how people will be able to use data as a valuable commodity to get it between systems. How is that sort of information going to work? How are you going to acquire information based on commodity prices and all that stuff, which also factors into like cargo hauling and those changes going on right now? It all feels like it's kind of intertwined, but like, I really wish CIG would just come out and say that, you know, like, we can read between the lines and fantasize that this is sort of the plan coming together, but they're not actually saying it. So I'm not sure if we should.
The thing is that, well, yes, I am very sad that this is going to kill the armory eventually, because I've been working on this thing for 2 years, and it has landed me jobs in real life. It has made me friends. It has brought me on many, many shows with many, many other creators.
That's awesome.
And yeah. So, and I'm very sad to see that go. But at the same time, I understand that this is progress for the game. But at the same time, I don't see CIG filling the gap that they're creating. There is no mention of being able to find this information in game for yourself when you need it. There is no mention of CIG providing this data in any way. Because this, Star Citizen is a game all about being prepared, all about having a plan, having the supplies, and coming in with everything you need. And they're really making that difficult now by doing this kind of thing. And I guess that kind of ties into the next question we have somewhere in there on how other games do this, so we're going to come back to it. But I wish CIG would come out with a statement or something that says, yeah, we're moving data server side, and this is kind of the long-term plan to replace the third-party services. Yeah. Because when you think about it, in the past, CIG have very proudly advertised third-party services. Erkul was very advertised by CIG in the early days. So I think so did they for UE Exchange and Trade Tools and other places that have done this. And that has been very stepped down in the last 2 years. It has been nearly impossible to get support for the armory from CIG on the same level.
So you don't pull a Reddit? They're going to turn on all their third parties?
Yeah. So I just would like to see, because I like making apps. This is fun for me. And also sort of a thing that's important for me professionally. So cutting that off is not very nice without some kind of explanation or some kind of a plan for the future. Just a little bit of information, CIG, like a little bit of transparency.
Well, I think this is the kind of time, like CitizenCon is a time for information like this to come out. Maybe not necessarily information about third-party apps, but definitely about the future of cargo hauling. This is like a major part of the game. CitizenCon is a time for them to give us updates on the major pillars of the game, and this change has implications for cargo haulers and traders, has implications for data runners, has implications for regular players, and it has implications for third-party makers. Like, this is a huge change that I think points towards a lot of stuff in the future.
The big takeaway here is that even if you make the data impossible to mine, people will figure out a way to get it. Like, either they will crowdsource this information, or I have experimented with sort of outlandish things like reading the prices and item descriptions from the screen while I play.
Well,
I have experimented with reading it from the game's memory while I play. That was fun. Don't do that. Don't do that at home, kids. Don't do that.
Well, let's talk about.
Is very angry about that.
let's talk about the crowdsourcing, because that's both sketchy and very time consuming. I think that the first question I would want to know on this is it worth it for smaller groups? And I know you might be opinionated on this. Is it worth it for smaller groups to be crowdsourcing their own data banks of this stuff? If we're thinking future wise, this is starting to throw some value on data, and having your own history of that might be useful, but it's also still an alpha. Is this something that smaller groups should be trying to do right now, or still relying on the big players?
It's very difficult to say. Truth is, I have seen a lot of small groups get a lot of high volume stuff done very effectively. But at the same time, I realize, Foxhole is actually a very good analogy. You have smaller groups of players playing for factions and they win the global war, but then they get burnt out on it. So they stop playing for a while and their faction loses the next war. So this is the same thing with sort of manual crowdsourcing of data in small groups. Like, you will be able to keep it up for a patch or two, like going to trade locations and recording commodity prices every day. But eventually, diminishing values out of it.
Well, does it need to be every day, though?
Well, if you want to be thorough.
True.
And, even if you don't go to the same location, it's just going to be everyday grind of trading. Is like, oh yeah, I'm going here for thing A, but I have to log the price of everything that is here. So I'm going to be here, 20 minutes instead of 5. Just writing things into a spreadsheet. And it gets annoying. Filling out forms for things is boring. We don't want to do it. My expectation for the Armory inventory and price submission is maybe 3 to 5% of users. And that's like an optimistic estimate. And, it creates a very diluted data source over time. So yeah, crowdsourcing, sketchy, time-consuming, difficult, especially when it's like, you have to distinguish here manual crowdsourcing, where someone's going to be like putting in information from one place to another manually, to automatic crowdsourcing, which is going to be like what I said, like reading the content of your screen with an external tool and automatically logging that. Most people will do that because you just have something running on your computer and it's going to do the crowdsourcing for you.
Oh, that's cool.
We're going to get to the cool stuff when we get to the other games part of how they do this. I have a very cool example.
Oh, I'm ready for that if you are. I would like to know how other games are dealing with a problem like this, especially since they probably aren't in alpha.
So Elite Dangerous, they have basically all their third-party developers banded together and created EDDN, Elite Dangerous Data Network, which is sort of like a single source of all data that's sourced from players. They have multiple tools that use this, and they have multiple tools that gather data for this. And they're all kind of integrated into this central database that holds all the data on pretty much everything from a lot of players. And the way you do this, you have an external tool installed on your computer. You run it while you're running Elite Dangerous, and it reads something called journal files, which is something that I think Star Citizen could do very easily. And what journal files do is, it's basically a set of files on your hard drive, and there's a couple types. Number one is literally a journal, a log of everything that's happening as you play your session. So, it logs that you logged in, where you are, what's going on with station, what you bought, where you jumped, what radar contacts you have, what planets you scanned, what contacts you had on that scan. And it logs it into a file with a timestamp, where you are, information about the event, which is kind of important for if you want to track exploration progress, that kind of stuff. Or, see who you fought, whatever, if you want to like historically look at what was happening in your sessions. But the second type of files is much more interesting for us, which is that it logs what commodities are available at the station that you last landed on, what components are available, what is the economic status or political status of that location. And these tools, they gather this information and they send it off to the database. And then someone comes in, they're like, oh, I am at this location, I'm at this star system, and I would like to buy this commodity right now. And they put that in, and it's going to give you a list of, yeah, this commodity is available at these locations, they are this far away, and this information is this old, because that's where the last entry for this location for this commodity was. And this is actually a very good self-balancing system. It is also very simple because Star Citizen already collects some of these logs. It already logs. If you look at the console as you're playing, it logs pretty much everything that's happening. So it wouldn't be too difficult to push this into a text file somewhere. And it's a self-balancing system because it still requires someone to go there to discover this information. And then it is just pooled together in an external tool, which essentially is what would be happening in real life. Like,
see, but I don't understand why the game doesn't just facilitate this. Why do players need to do that? I mean, does Elite Dangerous have an economy built around it, around data? Is data a commodity, or?
They don't have data as a commodity per se. You can buy data about commodities, but it will not give you this very granular view on things. And I think it's not necessary. Why do it in the game when external tool can do it better? Like, every sane person who wants to do high volume trading in any game with a dynamic economy is just going to open up an iPad or something next to their keyboard, and they're going to be punching things in there as they're flying. No one's going to be looking at in-game screens.
I don't know. I feel like in-game support, it's still a good thing to have, for your semi-casual kind of advanced player.
Absolutely. It's a very good thing to have, but people are mostly going to be looking at external things, especially for continuing the example of Elite, especially when looking at ship components and ships in general, where you want to buy them, you're going to be looking at external tools because you can't find this information in game.
Well, yeah,
it's not available.
There's also the difference between Elite and Star Citizen. We don't have these journal files, right? So this wouldn't even be possible for us.
This wouldn't even be possible, but I feel like it's something CAG should do. Even for like logging purposes of things. Like, you have some issue happening, you can put that log file on there, and they will be able to sort of trace back what you were doing and where. But also, generally having that information is pretty good, where you can kind of tell who you saw, where you went, kind of a thing. And like I said, I think it's very easy to implement, and it would actually, if they were to do it, it would actually solve a lot of third-party app issues. And like I said, it's self-balancing because you still need someone to go there to check the data. You still, so there is still that element of discovery.
Some money involved.
Yeah. So you still, have that self-balancing. You have that discovery, and I think it's a very elegant and very simple system. I would like to see it in Star Citizen. That's, like I said, very easy to implement. I would also like to see sort of a single source of third-party data for Star Citizen third-party apps. I would very much like to see that. That would be very cool, and all of us would save a lot of money on resources.
See, but that again feels like it would step on the economy surrounding data in the game. No?
I don't think so. I think data economy in Star Citizen in-game is going to work a little bit differently. Because you're going to be... Well, we don't know what it's going to look like, but I think it's going to be more of a data as a commodity rather than data as a source of information type thing. I think most people are still going to be looking outside. But I know CAG have had sort of diverging ideas on this over the years. So I'm very curious to see what they come up with. If they manage to do everything we can do with third-party tools in-game, I'm going to shut up. If they say that we're going to do this, that's going to be it for me. I will be happy, and they have to do absolutely zero support for me to do third-party apps. I will not.
We all hope.
We all hope, but just saying, third-party developers can probably do it better.
So to kind of close this topic out then, does this mean anything to you, these changes, again, big in terms of bringing the economy and the economic effects in under their own control, I guess, a little bit more. Does this point towards any implementation of quantum anytime soon? Any additional changes on that side of things?
I think probably not. I think this is, again, just a small step towards it. I think they're going to be testing it out a little bit, maybe let quantum have some reach on it. Because if you remember last CitizenCon, quantum is consuming data from live servers right now.
Yeah.
And it is running sort of a separate simulation based off of what we're doing. It's just not pushing any feedback to us. So I think they're going to do the same thing now with sort of commodity or item trading and commodities, and see how that works out and see what quantum would do in reaction. The control part of it. And then we might see more push towards getting it to the players. But I still think we're very far away on it. I'm hoping for some updates on CitizenCon.
Oh my gosh,
regarding
seriously.
the dynamic economy. Yeah, just get Tony Z on stage for an hour, okay?
I mean, I don't need it to be Tony Z. Like, the amount of times we've seen Tony Z and not his work, I feel like it doesn't lend well to people's confidence that what he says at CitizenCon is going to happen anymore. I think unless he's there with like hands-on showing this kind of stuff off, I think we need.
Yeah, I would like
more than
another
talk.
demo of quantum. It was very cool last time, and I think they could pull it off. Like I would like to see sort of under the hood, because I am assuming they have a very cool looking data interface for it, and I would like to see it.
Man, I don't know how they would show it and confirm that it's real, like verify that, but I would really, really like to see at least some more intermediate plans for the dynamic economy coming along, because we've been sitting and waiting on that one for long enough.
I definitely think this is a step towards it.
Yeah,
it does kind of throw a wrench into some of the things that I do, but that's okay. We all knew this was going to happen. I just kind of hoped they would give me a few more months.
As tumultuous as it is, the time right now with 2022 to probably 24, with the way these patches are working out and all these changes that are being made, this is such a big time. We're seeing so much of like the ground floor. Yeah. I know we're 10 years in, but we are seeing the ground floor of the MMO really weird, we'll be playing layout.
It's like finally we're seeing like the basics of things coming in.
Yeah,
and it's really weird because we have had a playable game for years now. And just now they're kind of putting in the things that are going to make the actual game that we want.
Yeah. Up until now, we haven't been even touching on what Star Citizen's supposed to be. This is like the actual beginning of it all. And it's weird. It's obviously it's a little frustrating, but it's also very exciting. Like we're gonna see some big changes coming from this and some of the other stuff that we'll probably be talking about
for CitizenCon.
Yeah,
I am so sad that I can't go in person, but
I'm interested.
I'm very excited
right now. I'm excited to see the people. I'm gonna be with that for now. We'll see what happens when it comes to the news on CitizenCon. Finally, to finish us off today, the last kind of wild news that I saw come out of this past week, because I was, like I said, I was out of town, got back, got everything in a deluge. Was a comment from Chris. I think this was in response to Terada on Spectrum. I am always kind of surprised when Chris is on Spectrum, or I'm actually more surprised really by how much people are pacified by that still. Not to say that they shouldn't be, not to really out my own opinion on it. I'm just, because it's been a while and we've seen a lot of kind of apologies and stuff, and it never really feels all that different to me. But we saw this kind of...
It was very surprising that Chris came out, and specifically for that post. Like that was very unexpected. It kind of shows...
Why do you think?
I mean, when you look at, historically social media for Star Citizen, Terada is a very frequent feature, because what he does with the low flying and the cinematics is very cool, and it is good advertising. So I think he has a little bit of a pull when it comes to sort of getting things out of CAG.
That streamer privilege?
Yeah.
That I've heard about?
Yeah.
Is he changing the game?
Yeah. Have you gotten yours yet? Okay, mine still hasn't come in the mail.
Yeah. No, they sent it to me over the internet. They said just download these stickers and it should work.
Shit.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I
Added
need
a
to reach
couple
out to
of
customer support.
added a couple of gigahertz to my system as well. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, and RAM.
Anyway, maybe I need to just stop complaining about the game for 5 minutes, and maybe they're gonna like me too. I'm not complaining. I do it with love, okay? I do it with love.
They love it. It helps. But so Tarada actually put out a post doing just that, talking about things that need to be done, kind of, or things that he would like to be seen. He would like to see be done to help improve the quality of the game.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Chris said in response was kind of just a explanation of these performance problems that we've seen both with 3.18 and now again with 3.20 into a much lesser extent. That are causing logon problems, player unstowed problems, all these weird things that have really popped up more in large numbers this year. And it draws attention to the entity graph because he talks about how they went with like a enterprise solution and it's not holding its weight. And I feel like it both pacifies people and gets people to be like, okay, they talk to us. They're telling us what's wrong. But also it's getting people to be like, yo, they went with this option and it didn't work. Why would they misjudge like that? Can they fix this? It is both an interesting statement and also one that brings up more questions. How do you view it?
So I am very happy to see that they're kind of communicating this, and I think the main reason we actually got this much information is because it was Chris, that he kind of like kind of went down to earth with it and just said what is happening, and because ultimately, he is the one who decides how much information they can put out. So, no one can tell him to shut up because he's Chris Roberts. So very happy
for
to
better
see,
or worse.
yeah. So I'm very happy to see this information being put out. Picking an enterprise solution is difficult. For specifically for what they were trying to do, probably not too many options. But the problem there was that probably none of the options was a perfect fit. So I think they went with what they thought would be kind of the best option. And the truth is, enterprise solutions rarely work out of the box because they're kind of the common denominator of
The cookie cutter.
Yeah, this it's supposed to fit kind of one size fits all, and then you build it out for what you're trying to do. So, and they don't have the reach to affect kind of the core parts of this enterprise solution. So now they have to kind of go back to the provider and be like, hey, we're seeing these kinds of issues. Can you address this somehow? And it is quite possible that Star Citizen is a very unique project for the provider of that enterprise service. And they're kind of having to do internal development, and it's iterating back and forth. And it's not uncommon to see this in software development. It sucks. It sucks a lot, but it does happen. Is this kind of a critical issue? Probably not. They can either kind of work back with the provider, try to work out these issues. If they cannot, that would be a problem. If they can't figure out a way to make this enterprise solution work, they either have to kind of make the big step to switch to a different one, which is a problem from a development standpoint because you kind of have to integrate a whole new thing all over again. And there's also some
we'd basically
agreements.
be brought back to pre 3.18. Yeah,
pretty much. And at the same time, you have legal agreements with the existing provider for the service, so you have to terminate that, and that can get complicated at times. And then they're faced with do we switch or do we implement our own solution? And
oh my god,
generally, I would be
long.
very against doing that, and I would strongly discourage CIG from doing that because that's going to add years to this because it is. I've kind of like after they showed the demo at CitizenCon, I think I kind of looked into kind of the theory behind this, the software engineering behind it, and oh my god, I would not want to be the guy trying to do this. Like I consider myself to be like an okay developer, but that was a little bit over my head. Like I
All
will,
this just for persistent entities, huh?
yeah.
Man.
I will admit this. Like it was a little bit over my head. I am just, like I said, I'm just a stupid full stack developer.
Local network.
Yeah, local network guy. I don't understand some of this persistent data stuff and how they're trying to do things with graphs, for example. Like it makes perfect sense to do it with a graph because that's how they're handling entities in the game. I just don't know how I would go about implementing this as a solution because it's not something I've worked for.
Well, best of luck to them.
Yeah, I sure hope they make it work because if they don't, that's going to be a major problem.
Yeah, I mean that could kill it. No, if PES, if entity graph doesn't work, what else is there? I mean,
like I said, they can try a different enterprise solution, which would be they can probably make the switch fairly quickly from a development standpoint.
okay.
I generally implementing an outside, external solution is because the solutions are meant to be integrated. They're built that way, so it should be fairly easy to do it. But then you're kind of sent back to to zero essentially, and you have to kind of again develop everything that you did with the previous solution, and that would delay things for.
Yeah, and I don't think they have that kind of time left. I mean, I guess with Squadron 42 wouldn't really depend on this, hopefully, and give them a lot more time. But like, the PU needs to start coming of age soon. Like they,
while Squadron 42 would buy them some time and some favor with the backers, let's say. The truth is that most people inside Star Citizen and sort of in the wider gaming world are looking at the PU as kind of the benchmark for what is Star Citizen. And if the PU is not progressing, if the PU is not delivering the quality of life, then this becomes a problematic topic because we have been at this for 10 years now. We're seeing results, yes, but we haven't really broken out of a single star system and 100% person servers yet. And that's, MMOs have been created and have died in this time. When you think about it, ESO has been around pretty much the same amount of time, and they're making it work. But granted, ESO is a different system.
Different kind of game. Yeah.
So
it always ends up coming back to that. I think there's so many different details that kind of define whether or not this game has been in development this long or not. Like, just from the way the studio formed to COVID to mismanagement, like there's just so many variables. It's hard to say whether or not they should be in this spot. I'm glad to see them tackling difficult issues. I'm excited that not only is this game a space game that I'm really excited about, like at just being a space game, it is a cutting edge game. It might not be the most advanced in the places that matter the most in the gaming industry, but it's pushing the things that I feel like I really care about, and it feels like it's on a mission, and that kind of conviction just feels a lot better to be involved with that. I'm here for the game. I'm here to play the game, but I'm also here to support something that's doing something cool in the industry,
Yeah. I mean, I had heard a good analogy. I was actually the Vienna Bar Citizen a couple of weeks ago. Good times. But I met someone and they told me a very good analogy for Star Citizen. There's this castle in France, and they're building it currently, like it's under construction, and it's just like a team of modern day archaeologists building this using sort of the traditional medieval methods. And if they're turning away volunteers who want to help build this, they have the money to do this, but the goal of the project is not to build the castle. The goal of the project is to let people see how they did it. So the construction, the journey to the castle itself is the main attraction. And I feel like Star Citizen is very much similar to this. Like, we're not here for the final game. I mean, yes, we want to see the final game, but we're here for like
yeah,
the development. We want to see the new technology. We want to see the new content because it's still bringing out new things, and it's. I think CAG is being very adventurous with a lot of things. We're seeing a lot of content done differently. We're seeing very unparalleled coverage of the project. Like when you think about it, we have SC Live, we have ISC, we have all these shows being put out on sort of the social media about the project, and they're just like keep bringing up this new information, more information, showing new things all the time.
slowed down a little bit lately, but yeah,
slow down
I
a
agree.
little bit. But they should start showing off more Squadron 42 stuff. I know they're trying not to spoil it, but show us a little Squadron. Give us a little Squadron, a little bit. Like I already bought it. Like it's fine. Like, but a little bit.
I would liken the game a bit to a Sagrada Familia, to be honest. It's like something that is just being done to be done at this point for the beauty of the project. So freaking long. Funded by people who didn't even know it was a thing when it first started, but still going, and people are still looking forward to the completion of it. And I certainly am. I mean, I agree. I'm here for the journey, but dang, this is a game that when not even finished, man, like 4 or 5 years from now,
it's gonna be a hell of a destination.
When we're not having as many wipes, when the server crashes maybe aren't as bad, when more players can be together and performance is still keeping up. And like these systems that we're seeing the groundworks for right now, the economy, the entity system, the cargo hauling, bounty hunting, mining, salvage, all that stuff running, man, this is going to be a sick game to play.
It's gonna be a good time. And that's, we're getting there. We're gonna get there. Progress is being made. Like we're finally seeing, the progress on the base stones of this whole thing. And I could not be happier. Even if it's slow on the content, even if we have instability, even if we have bugs, it's moving forward. There is, on one hand, as a player, like to see this. On the other hand, as a content creator, it's things to talk about.
I just need more. We just need better information sharing. This year has been a definite step back, I think, in that regard.
It has been an ongoing issue. I think we always talk about this on the show. It's an ongoing issue for years now, where CAG say they're going to be more transparent, but then they kind of step back.
Players currently have more advanced gameplay in their hands than what's on the roadmap.
Yeah,
that's weird. I understand why that happened, but it still indicates to me just how restrained information is now compared to a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I feel like they might have done the whole 321 thing a little bit prematurely, like the actual release of the PTU. They should have probably done it with a roadmap update, because it's a major shift in the roadmap when you think about it.
Yeah,
because it literally moves half of the 320 column into another patch. But the thing is, when you do it without the patch itself, it looks very bad. Like it would look very, very bad, even if you like put it in with the announcement, like we're gonna have a 321 PTU this week.
They also
even then it looks pretty weird.
They also didn't say if it was like a new code base, maybe, which would be telling a lot. Just overall, I wasn't here in real time to see how this all laid out, so I read it all happen in like 5 minutes. But to me, it felt kind of rushed a little bit. I don't know, but
yeah, they did kind of push it out of nowhere.
Yeah,
the way I found out, I'm sitting at home, I'm drinking wine, and I get a message from someone who's like, "Yo, 321." I'm like, what? Am I drunk? And I look on Spectrum, I'm like, 321.
Yeah, very surprising. That was an interesting move. All right, Coder. That wraps it up for today, my friend.
Yay.
Thank you for coming on, chatting about some good stuff. This has been a surprising last week, and there's a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to.
Always happy to come on. It's always a good time. And, I always read the comments. So, guys, if you have things to say to me, put them in the comments. I do read the comments on these things.
I try, but honestly, people are mean. There was a point when I was just like, dude, my brain could do better with mental health.
Oh man, you just gotta dissociate some more. Great.
Yeah. Well, if you could let people know where they could go and help you dissociate on YouTube and also on your website, that'd be good. We'll have it in the show notes.
If you can find the Armory at armory.spacecoder.space, which is the FPS loadouts tool. We have some very cool features. You can see pictures of various weapons and armor.
Yeah.
You can also save your loadouts now. That has been a feature for a couple months now, and it is very popular with people.
Nice.
It's very, very popular. And if you are very nice to me and ask me nicely, I can even make you a custom link for your loadout. Very
That's
nice,
fun.
I know. Yeah, I made a whole separate tool to do this.
Dope, dude. So it seems like a good thing to offer supporters.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you ask me very nicely, I can do that for you. And for listening to more of me rambling about Star Citizen, you can find me at YouTube/@TheSpaceCoder, which is I upload once a week because I have a job and I work way too many hours and I'm trying to sleep in between. So once a week, have a little video talking about things happening in Star Citizen, talking about the economy. Right now, I have an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the quantum simulation and the dynamic economy. And that's it. I drew that out very, very too much.
It's a good spiel.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people are already over there watching. If you are still here, though, if you are, thank you so much for listening. If you're on audio platforms, thanks for watching if you're on YouTube. But if you don't like ads, those audio platforms are ad-free, supported by our supporters, lovely supporters supporting the support. They're great people. Patreon, YouTube, Twitch, and Ko-fi. Thank you so much for what you do. You can watch the podcast here live with us, listen to our before and after podcast chats with all the drama. You can join us in exclusive chat rooms. You can get your own referral code in my referral randomizer on my new players guides and stuff, and many, many more little things sprinkled here and there. If you do want to support us, me and my wife do this full time. This is our job. We host the 2 YouTube channels, the podcast, the streams, all that jazz, and hope you enjoy the content. But,
a lot of work, guys. Do the support.
It helps. It helps us a lot. But thank you all for joining us today for episode 121. SpaceCoder, thank you one last time for coming.
Thank you.
And I will... Thanks, man. And I'll catch you all next week. Bye.